In the last video, we went over how to use processing in active mode by using the setup and draw methods. We put the size and the background functions inside the setup method, and you can see right now it's nothing different than if we had been using static mode. We're just seeing that white background. Even still, if I add a shape here, that's the color blue, and if I put an ellipse located in the center of the screen, 250, 250, 100 pixels wide by 100 pixels high, it's not going to look very different. I'm just seeing that circle. However, what's really happening here is because the draw method is happening 60 times a second, these functions are being called over and over, 60 times a second. What's really happening here is that this is not one circle, but this circle has been drawn over and over and over again, 60 times as many seconds as have passed since I hit the run button. That's kind of why you can see it's kind of like this pixelated edge around. So we can use the property of the draw method, the fact it runs over and over and loops through over and over and over again, to give the illusion that this circle is moving by changing its x or y, depending on what you want, but we're going to change the x coordinate, the x location of the circle, to make it move horizontally across the screen. So we can't anymore use the static number 250. We want it to start at 250, but then to be located at 251, 250, 252, 250. So we want to increase this value over time. And to do that, we are going to use a variable. In math that you may have done so far, variables are often representatives of values you're trying to find. In programming, it's actually closer to the real meaning of the word variable. A variable is something that can change, a number that can change in this case. In programming, variables are not limited to numbers, but we'll get to that in the future. For our purposes right now, let's say it's a number that can change. In processing, you need to be specific about what your variable is. We're going to start by making a variable that's an integer meaning all counting numbers, their negative counterparts, and 0. Again, we'll also get to non-integers in the future, but to say that we're going to make a variable that's an integer, we want to, the term is to declare a variable, that's to give it a type, integer, and also to give it a name. So to give it that type, I'm going to write int. That means I'm going to name a variable that will be used as an integer. You can name a variable anything that is just includes letters, numbers, and underscores. No spaces, no special characters, and it can't start with a number. It has to start with a letter, in fact. In the industry, names are really specific, and you want to make sure your name has something to do with the variable you are where you're using that variable. So this might be like, I could say x parameter circle would be a great name, but it's a little long. So for our purposes right now, I'm just going to say x because I'm using it as the x parameter, that x location. A really bad name for this variable would be y, because you would assume if you saw y as a variable, you'd be using it as the y parameter. So I'm going to say x. And this is known as declaring a variable. That means when the program sees x in the future, it knows it's an integer variable. The next thing you want to do in setup is what's known as initialize the variable, give it a starting value. And to do that, it's really easy. I'm just going to say x equals, and whatever I want the first value of x to be. I'm going to, since my circle right now is at 250, I'm going to say that's the initial value, 250. So that's known as initializing it. Initialize the variable. If you don't initialize your variable, processing will assume you want a starting value of 0, but that's really bad practice. You should always initialize your variables. Finally, to use this variable, you have to actually sub it in for the number that you, or the place that you want to use it. So I have to use that variable in this function. Otherwise, it exists in my program, but it's not doing anything for me. So I want to use x as the x parameter. If I play this now, again, it just looks the same because x just has that value of 250 and I'm not changing it. So finally, in order to change that value, I want to say x, that's going to be the new value of x after the circle is drawn. Make a new value of x that's equal to the old value of x plus or minus how much you want to change it. So if I say x equals x plus 1, the new value of x after this equation is called will be old value of x plus 1. So the next time through, x will be 251. It'll draw a circle at 251, 250, add another one onto x. So the next time through, x will be 252, and so on and so forth. So then each time draw happens, it's drawing that circle in a new place. If I wanted the circle to move faster, or if I wanted to see, a little bit more space between these circles being drawn, I could increase how much I'm increasing the value of x by. So now you can see these are all 5 pixels apart. It's drawing one at 250, then 255, 260, and so on. If I wanted it to move the other direction, I could subtract.